Greetings, gamers, and welcome to Season 5, Episode 6 of Ropai Gamma, the Gamers Podcast. I'm your GM, Byron, and of course with me is my co-host, Howard.
Greetings, everyone.
Got it right.
Good job, dude.
Pardon me. And joining us once again tonight is our fellow gamer and friend, Puff.
Hey, everybody.
So, okay, work has sucked for me, so there actually hasn't been a whole lot of gaming going on with me recently. However, I suppose I will go ahead and start, since I will be short. What the hell have I done?
Cough, Resident Evil. Cough.
Oh, yes! Haha!
Nice reminder there. Very subtle.
Well, since the Epic game couldn't happen this week,
Again.
because two of our players are, I think they were going to the Bahamas, I think it was?
Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico, I think it was. Somewhere down there that were little rat bastards.
Beaches, fun, sun, all that stuff.
Yeah, bioluminescent pools that they're snorkeling in and whatnot. Yeah, all that fun stuff. Jerks.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you're into that vacation kind of thing.
Huh?
If you're into that whole vacation thing.
Yeah, I know, right. Well, actually, this is, they're celebrating their wedding anniversary. This is kind of a second honeymoon.
Ooh, nice.
Aww.
Yeah, so, yeah, which almost, to me, makes it kind of worse, because I don't think I even really had a first honeymoon, much less a second.
We went to the Bahamas.
What is it?
My parents went to the Bahamas.
Y'all
Dude,
suck.
Bahamas honeymoon, man, like, I don't even know how to describe. It is, yes.
Jerks, all of you. Anyway.
My sister's going to Hawaii.
Another good place to go for that. You don't want to go...
Anyway, because of that, Puff offered to. Well, actually, I had offered to start something. I was originally going to start it with Liz, but I invited Miriam and Puff to join in as well. But Puff actually had something ready to go to run for a Saturday night right then and there. So she ran her Resident Evil game, which was very intriguing. We actually played ourselves. And, of course, it's a very rules-light system. It's basically, she occasionally tells you to roll a d20, add a various modifier, and consults a Magic 8-Ball die. That's pretty much it. But what it was Miri, Puff, Liz, and I were at the Waynesburger here in Waynesboro. Puff and Miri were up visiting us, and Puff all of a sudden disappeared. So we had to start tracking down what the heck happened to her. And I will admit, Liz got a little miffed because apparently every game she's been in where she's been playing herself, someone has disappeared. So I think it was either you or... So what?
It's always the person running the game.
So yeah, as she says, it's always the person running the game, which of course means I've done it once or twice to her already. But I think either Miri or Puff offered to run her something where that didn't happen. But overall, it was very intriguing. I can't wait to actually try to finish it up. The really funny thing though was in the game, when Puff disappeared, I did what I could to try to find out stuff, but also we felt in danger, so I came back to my apartment, which is only a few blocks away from the restaurant, and I started calling in the game. I started calling up friends because if it's one strength that I have, it's if I don't know it, I probably know someone who does. Or I know someone who knows someone. I actually have got a pretty decent connection of contacts. Howard being one of the major nodes for that. So I was just like, I'm going to call up Howard. And then I don't know if you remember it was me or someone else joked, it's like, you should really call Howard. I was like, you know what? I will. So I actually called up Howard on my cell phone, put him on speaker, and gave him the lowdown of what was going on in the game. And I was like, all right, now how would you advise me in this situation? And Howard went for a good half an hour.
Well, I had Ricky too. You had the dream team down here.
Yeah, that's true.
I flat out said there was no way that I could, NPC Howard. No.
Yeah, that was it. That was it. You could do James, but you were like, there's no way I could NPC Howard. I was like, well, I can call him. And she was like, do it. And I was like, all right.
Listen, I have called you enough times from battle in the middle when I'm being killed. Like that was totally turnabout as fair play, man. I was like, you know what, I deserve this, so I'll help out.
Yeah, especially considering like most of the times when you were at battle, I was running a game,
Yes.
and all of a sudden I get a call and I'm hearing artillery in the background, and I'm like, "What the Howard? Hello, Howard? Where the boo boo? Ah, 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 ah." Oh shit! He called me on the battlefield again. I remember one time you were like, "Hey man, what's up?" I was like, "Oh, just running. What's up with you?" He's like, "Oh, I'm dead." What? He's like, "Yeah, I'm dead on the field, just waiting, for the battle to be over, someone to come get my ass." And I'm like, "So you just decided to call me?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" I'm like, "Okay."
It seemed like the thing to do at the time. I had signal. I had a few minutes to myself. It was a beautiful day.
In his time of dying, Byron, he calls you. That's friendship.
Right.
That's friendship.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun for me too, because Byron calls up. He's like, "I need to know this information." I'm like, "All right, Ricky, let's give the rundown."
And I could hear the entire thing because, like,
Well,
Byron
yeah,
said,
I put it on speaker, so it was playing into the microphone so everyone could hear it.
I was hoping. I hope it was somewhat helpful at least to give you some options.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So
Now, here's a kicker. Ricky was actually outside of the outset where you explained this is a game. So he comes back inside after I'm already in the discussion of kidnapping and, like stalking and the appropriate things. Ricky sits down. It's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Well, I'm helping Byron kidnap somebody." He's like, "Oh, cool." So he jumps in and helps out. The whole thing ends. I hang up with you and he goes, "So did we just help him actually kidnap someone or is this some kind of game?" I'm like, "Nope, we helped him kidnap someone." Ricky's like, "Cool."
glad to know I've got friends that can help in illicit activities and not give a shit.
That's why you called me, dude. I
Pretty
got
much.
the cups.
Pretty
But
much.
He was totally like, "Was that for real?" And I'm like, "Yep." He's like, "Oh, cool. All right. Tell me how it goes."
So, but overall, that game went well, and like I said, I can't wait to continue that one.
Me too.
Let's see. On Sunday, since I'd ended the Star Wars game, Tim is actually running a Fate game based off of the anime called Fairy Tail.
Oh, wow.
Are you familiar with it?
I'm familiar with Fate and Fairy Tail. I haven't read it, but I got friends that are big into it, and I know what it's about.
Okay. So, which I'm actually so far it's starting off kind of interesting. We created characters, and actually did a little bit of an intro. We're going to play again on Saturday because after this weekend, that group is not meeting for at least 3 weeks.
What is your character type in that one?
I am actually doing card magic.
Card magic. Okay, because I know each one has a different style.
Yeah, but it's slightly different than the card magic in Fairy Tail specifically.
Okay.
It's based more off of the card magic by an author named Robert Aldrich, who did a novel called Ghee, Ghee. You can buy it like used or maybe get a PDF of it. He doesn't actually publish it anymore because he was doing a whole bunch of books and then he stopped and it started completely revamping his writing style and is doing stuff on his website, and I haven't been able to really follow what all he's been doing recently, which unfortunately sucks because our physical copy that was signed by him got lost.
Oh.
And I've never actually finished the book. I've attempted 3 times now. I got a PDF on my phone that I've gotten further than I ever did before.
That's suckage, dude.
But I still need to actually frickin' finish it. Liz has read it through though, and there's one character called Husari, who he himself does not have any magic, but he wants to learn magic. So he's currently following around the main characters who are a couple of ninjas, trying to learn their magic, their ninja magic, and they won't teach it to anyone outside of their clan, which, by the way, they're the last 2 members of their clan because they're off on a revenge mission to kill who killed off their entire clan.
Wow, that seems like a self-defeating prophecy right there.
Well, actually, they're making a pretty damn good attempt of it in the book. So, so what Husari does is he actually got started as a card shark. And in that world, there are magical cards. Each card has a spell effect, and I think sometimes you can lay one on top of the other to combine effects. But they're one-time use. And since he's a card shark, he's really good at swindling the cards around. So he's really, plus he's studied magic constantly.
So he can pull the card he needs for the right situation.
Yeah, pretty much. And he knows, like, you know, he can keep. I mean, he carries like 3 or 4 decks on him. He's got like one under his turban, one up a sleeve, one in a pocket, one, you know. And he knows like all of, you know, all the cards that he has. And when they need money, he goes and swindles in card games and and like poker games and whatnot. But I've always wanted to experiment with that style of magical item, I guess you could really call it. But I only have really thought of 2 systems that I thought could actually do it well without so much record keeping. One of which is Besem, using item of power with dynamic sorcery. Because dynamic sorcery is very open-ended. It's just basically, okay, you can do stuff of this level, go. You know. And Fate, because again, Fate can be very open-ended. And so I discussed with Tim, you know, like, the card magic I was pulling from, and he actually worked with me to where instead of it pulling from my own personal energy like it does in Fairy Tail, it is actually the cards hold the magic, and what it is I make a resource roll every time I pull a card. The idea being is I'm rolling to see if I could afford the card, you know, afford and have previously bought the card I'm looking for. So if I don't make the roll, I didn't buy the card. So I was like, I need this kind of card, and I don't have it. So now I got to come, you know, that's my turn, and then I got to come up with something else.
Oh.
Yeah, which because otherwise you would have to actually keep track of how many cards you have in your deck, and keep track of every single card you've got in there. I mean, it's record keeping that if someone had already developed it, I wouldn't mind doing. But to develop it myself is what's kind of been stopping me.
Yeah.
Because that's just too much damn work. And I'll admit it. That's not to say I won't eventually do it, you know, at some point in time anyway, but just not right now. So I'm going on a lot longer than I thought I was. So we actually created that character. We started that game. There's someone else in the group does gravity magic. Someone else does time magic, but specifically time magic to heal. So I'm guessing what she does is, aside from being, you know, well schooled in medicines and herbs, she like can reverse the time on the wound to make it to where it's not there anymore, kind of thing.
Cool.
And then we actually have an actual fairy who their stick is they summon up celestial beings, celestial spirits that act as their kind of proxy to things. So he's got like an honorable samurai, he's got like an armor-clad warrior, and you know, and he's just got these few set, you know, proxies that he can summon.
Cool.
So we started that on Sunday, and that was cool. And I'm working on the Besem game with Miri, Puff, and Liz, which is actually superheroes. I'm attempting to do superheroes in Besem. Which I think it can do, you know, just I've never actually done specifically superheroes before in Besem. And I've never had a Besem game last more than a session or two, so I'm hoping I can do that with this one.
We'll break that cycle.
I hope so. It mainly depends on me and how prepared I am. So I'm actually trying to put a lot of I actually finished Liz's character today. I just need to do her companion. Which I don't think I gave quite enough points to, so I might have to rethink what I was doing with it or try to up it a little. But then I'm going to work on Miri's character, and then I'm going to work on yours, Puff.
Okay.
So, because yours is actually easy.
Yay.
So, and that's pretty much all I've been doing. So, what about you, Howard?
Let's see. Star Wars game didn't happen. Well, actually, let me see. The only game that really happened recently was Chris Fishburne, who old school friend from back in the days when I was in college. He was the dude who ran for me. He was my treasurer back when I ran the gaming association for UGA. Anyway, he ran a really cool Shadowrun game. You know, I keep saying that, like, I go to the game, I've stayed there for 3.5 hours, and I do absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
This time I actually got to do something. I fired a single shot. So that was really
forbid.
Cool. Oh, no. So you'll enjoy this. I haven't mentioned this before, have I yet?
Well, not you actually firing a shot. No, last time I heard you did jack and shit.
So this new one, so I got Billy the Kid, who is my phys ed shootist, and I love this character more than I can say. He is from Seattle, and he is a urban cowboy. He is an absolute redneck, although he has never actually been to the South nor seen a steer. So he's a poser. And his entire persona comes from watching like old like westerns. He basically.
Oh God.
Yes. He's
a spaghetti poser even.
He's a spaghetti poser. Yeah, he's hilarious. Every bad Southern stereotype, I just make it funny. So anyway, but he's a phys ed shootist, and so he carries 2 pistols and a rifle, and that's it. And so anyway, so. Most of the time we're playing in Seattle. Well, Chris decided he was going to do his own game. We were going to be over in Boston, and so everyone created all new characters for Boston. And so when I showed up at the game, they're like, "Well, who are you playing?" I'm playing Billy, and they're like, "Is this like the Boston version of Billy?" I'm like, "No, this is Billy." They're like, "How are you going to play Billy? It's a whole different city." And I'm like, "Air travel, you morons! This is Shadowrun. It's not like we're in the Stone Age." I'm like, "I hopped a flight." And they're like, "You can't do that." I'm like, "Why not? I've been with you on the last 3 missions. I have done absolutely nothing but sit in the car, and I've made 24,000 new yen. I could afford a first-class plane ticket to Boston, I think." So I sure shooting, flew to Boston, hooked up with a new group, and we had we had like 3 different missions in one. And the whole time I'm just chilling in the van, right? We get out, we do something, I step outside, I have a smoke, get back in the van, ride around. Well, anyway, finally, it was kind of funny because, like, again, I'm not doing anything but showing up. I'm getting paid 10,000 new yen just to ride around the van, dude, like for a half an hour.
Easy money.
I know, right?
Especially for a Shadowrunner, that is just easy money.
Yeah, I literally got paid 10 grand just to ride around the back of a vehicle. Anyway, and do nothing but smoke. And they paid for my food and my beer. So anyway, so we finally get to this the third op, and because we had like 4 mini missions in one. It was crazy. And so, that we pull up, and apparently, and I don't even know, I was so not paying attention at this point that I was like actually just sitting there just like spinning in my chair. Like I was so bored because my character wouldn't have cared. I usually play tactical characters like Karen, all like, Billy doesn't give a crap. He shoots and he drinks, and that's it.
And say, give him something to shoot and give him a beer. I mean, he's good.
He's all good. So anyway, so we're sitting there, and I get out of the van, the armored vehicle, and I'm sitting there smoking a cigarette, and one dude's like, "Well, I'm going to approach the tree." And I'm in character. I'm like, "You're doing what?" He's like, "Our mission is to fix some equipment in this tree." And I'm like, "You're gonna fix a tree? Cool. I'm getting paid 10,000 yen. Go ahead, have fun with the tree. I don't care." So while I'm just sitting there smoking a cigarette outside the van, the other character goes up to the tree and jury rigs a panel. Apparently, someone built a listening device into a tree. Don't ask me why. I didn't care. Like I paid no attention to the scenario whatsoever. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden the GM's like, rolls a bunch of dice, and he's like, a shot rings out and hits the branch above the one character's head, and the shot slams into the character off to your right. Roll initiative. And I'm Billy. So I'm like, cha-ching! And my initiative is broken. And I got like I got a 30 or 27 initiative. I got two 5s and a 6. It was retarded. So he's like, I'll go into bullet time, right? I'm a phys ed. And so the shot rings out.
What is phys ed again?
A physical adept. Physical adepts are mages. They're not mages. Physical adepts are magic users in Shadowrun who channel energy through their bodies. Think about like monks and wushu, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Chi energy.
Yeah.
So the shot rings out, and the player character who got missed was close enough to see the shoot. Well, not see the shooter, but see the flash. And so he's calling out like he's supposed to. I couldn't believe that one of my teammates actually did something tactical. I almost peed myself. I was so excited. He starts calling out location of the shot. And so, so the GM's like, everyone roll initiative. And my initiative was insane. He's like, all right, what's Billy going to do? I'm like, here's what I do. I flick the cigarette into the air. He's like, okay. I say I activate enhanced agility. I backflip over the hood of the car, drawing my rifle. As soon as I reach the far side of it, I drop into a crouch, drop in the bipod on the rifle, line up my shot, and take a shot. He's like, roll it. Roll. He's like, what'd you get on your shot? I'm like, 17. He's like, what? I said 17 successes. I got 17 successes on that shot. He goes, what? I'm like, yes, I have 17 successes. You can check my dice. So anyway, long story short, he dodged anyway. 11 physical got through, like 11 physical, and it was hilarious because now my character is a Shadowrunner, and my character is actually not a super person, but he's a phys ed, so he's pretty physical. He's not a troll or something like that. Anyway, but he has 11 physical, and he's like a hero. This is a mook. So yeah, so the shot rings out. Dude calls the location. Billy flicks the cigarette, dives backward over the thing, draws a rifle, drops a rifle on the hood of the car, takes a shot, headshot at 400 meters, and then the cigarette hits the ground. At which point Billy starts singing "Achy Breaky Heart" because he's bored again.
That's nice. That's awesome.
That was the only shot that was the only shot fired in the entire game.
But you made it count.
Yeah.
No, but see, after that, the enemies just ran. They're like, well, screw this. They just bolted. So that ended combat. Nobody else got to actually act in the combat. Like we had like
What is it with you and ending combat before it barely starts?
I know! I was laughing so hard. You have no idea. Like, that's twice, mother. Don't give combat characters because I will break the game. But no, like... So anyway, we get back in the van, we go do a couple things. Finally, we pick up this chick, and apparently she'd been experimented on. She'd been kidnapped as like a kid and cloned like 19 times. They were experimenting on her, pumping her full of Bioware. They turned her into a super assassin. She killed all of her handlers and escaped with amnesia, so she was living on the streets. We were hired to recover her. So when we find her in the streets, we convince her to come back with us, and we actually take her back to her original case officer. All I'm leading up to the point is most of the team goes in to like check the case. Hang on a second, guys. Come in, man. Most of the team,
Hey, Ricky.
most of the team, yeah, it's Ricky. Most of the team had gone in to check out the caseworker to make sure that he wasn't like lying to us, right? So I'm in the van with the chick and the driver. That's it. Now I'm 19. She's a 17-year-old cloned super soldier with amnesia and basically killer instincts. So she's like just a living weapon, right?
Right.
A living weapon with a kill switch that we don't know what triggers it.
Oh, wonderful.
So no, seriously. So they call me and they're like, all right, it's clear, bring her in. I'm like, all right, you ready to go inside? So she walks with me and she's all like a little weirded out. We go inside, we sit down, and we introduce her to the guy. We make the handoff. Right before I grab a card and I write my number and I hand it to her, or my name and number, and I hand it to her in Seattle. I'm like, hey, if you're ever in Seattle, look me up, babe. And I walk out the door. And like the whole team is like, you just gave your name and number to a killer, like a super soldier assassin. It was like a robot. I'm like, dude, dating's hard in the shadows, man. You gotta take them where you get them.
Well played, sir.
Yeah.
Well played.
The whole team just kind of looked at me like, you are insane. I'm like, man, I got money to burn. So there was that. Then last night we had the Shinetar, our next Shinetar, whatever. I don't even know how to go into it. Long story short, Wolfhaven, my commander, was MIA. So Ricky's character, actually, Hawksclaw, was in command of the whole team, and it was a collaborative event with another game that basically, while I was at Andocon, I met up with a GM in my area. He was running a storyline. He'd concluded his part of the storyline, but he'd allowed some of the enemies to escape. He gave me the skinny on his game. I took his NPCs. They arrived in my town, and then my team ran them down to return them to him. So this whole thing is actually playing off other games. I'm working with other GMs, handing off NPCs, handing off player characters, exchanging ideas. It's a global collaboration, and we're actually working into each other's games. Like you run something, and then one of your guys escapes, and I get your guy, and we catch him, we return him to you. In the meantime, you get some information for us. It's a global collaboration. It's freaking awesome.
It sounds awesome.
So,
Boy.
yep, that was pretty awesome. And last but not least, I will leave this with you. Today, my town of Estronaut was officially sanctioned as the regional command for the Western Alera, which means, according to Sean Patrick Fannin, I am now a regional commander, and I control like a significant portion of the map
Nice.
globally, and that means like 6 games fall underneath my authority now.
Yeah, have fun with
Wow.
So that's me.
Me?
As I say, unfortunately, I think I described just about everything you're doing in what I did, but
Pretty much, no epic game, superheroes coming in Besum, and I ran Resident Evil, yay.
That sounded like a lot of fun. We really enjoyed being part of it. Go on, boy.
I
really enjoyed being part.
I really enjoyed that. First off, Byron was like, I could call Howard, and then everybody said, do it. That was awesome. And then, not only did he call you, after he got off the phone with you, you texted him back, and he played it in-game. Oh wait, Howard's texting me, hold on. I loved it.
I was sending him coordinates to a possible ambush site.
I was actually almost expecting to get the voicemail, in which case, in-game, it was going to be like, I got his voicemail, alright, I'm going to have to do this on our own. But no, I actually, after a few rings, he picked up. I was like, oh shit, alright, well, hey, dude, need your help. He's like, sure, what? And I'm like, we're doing this.
Just so you guys know, we were actually on Google Earth getting tactical real-time data about your area.
Nice.
We were on Street View looking up possible ambush sites, and that actually what I gave you was GPS coordinates of a possible ambush site.
Yes, for all the listeners out there, they were going to try to attempt to kidnap a cashier waitress at the restaurant that tried to tell them, oh no, it was just you three that came in, there was no fourth person. You didn't
I don't have a receipt for her food, which is sitting right there on the table.
She was part of the conspiracy. She had to be apprehended.
Yep, she was. Because actually, when we went back, she just quit and left.
Yes, suspicious activities.
Yep. So, but then we caught up with the suit that had been wandering around, because apparently he's the one that dropped us the photo, so he was trying to help us. So we all got up in Liz's truck and drove. And I love how the fact that he's just like, okay, just keep driving. And I'm like, do you want us to go to Hagerstown or pull off somewhere, or head another direction? Because I knew the road we were on. It goes from Waynesboro to Hagerstown if you go down far enough. He's like, no, I won't be in the car that long. And by the end of it, he was like, all right, just pull over here. And I just like, I hope you like cow fields. Because I was clocking it. I was like, we are so out of Waynesboro by now. And he's just like, no, that's okay. My helicopter's coming. I'm like, oh yeah, great, wonderful. I was like, I hope you like pastures, Bucky.
Yeah, well,
So,
you're just lucky that there was somebody to help you.
yeah, because otherwise I would have been like, what the fuck?
How do we find Puff?
Anyway.
Put a bell on her or something.
I do need a bell. I'm short. No one can really see me in a crowd. I need a bell.
Yes.
You need to be local for a bell to work for me, at least.
That's true. Just put a GPS tracking unit in me. That's cool.
Don't tempt me.
You have a cell phone. You already have one.
Yeah. Wait, I hardly ever have that phone with me.
Yeah, she barely has it on her.
Oh, what happened in the game, Byron? Where was the phone?
Yeah, in your purse.
Not with me.
We tried that. So, anyway, the reason why Puff is actually joining us tonight is because of you, Howard, actually. Yeah, I didn't tell him.
Oh.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on. I mean, yes, I know I'm in a podcast, but like beyond that, I have no idea what's going on.
One would hope you would at least know that's going on.
Story of my life.
Yeah. Anyway, Puff listened to our episode from last week.
Uh-oh.
And actually agreed on a lot of what we were saying about the Epic game and how that everyone in the game could improve. So, and she actually, I think she said at one point in time she did ask you, but either you didn't hear her or got distracted. She actually asked you like what you felt she could do to be a better player.
I asked in the Facebook page for the Epic game. I kind of addressed everybody, but all I got was Matt and Mary saying, "Oh, you're doing fine," which is great. But that doesn't help me improve if
well, just like how I say with the good, bads, and uglies, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, and like the thing that you guys have been doing is a lot of identifying what players can do to be better. So I figured since I want to be better, why not, kind of at least for the podcast too, have a demonstration of what that kind of conversation could go down like.
That's a good idea.
As she wanted specifically you.
It's a hard conversation, and I'll be honest with you. To preface this, is that most people don't take any kind of what people consider criticism, which usually isn't meant to be. People just don't take advice well at all. One of the most horrible people taking advice is Byron throughout my life, because typically whenever I told him like one thing, he would do the opposite just to spite me. Throughout history. Which is pretty much the basis of our relationship.
It's not as bad as it used to be. Because you actually started realizing what the hell was going on, too.
Yes,
and you're like, shit.
No, but back in the day, man, day, I just went, but when my father did is my father's like, don't do this. And that doesn't work with you. It works with me great. It doesn't work with you. So I had to adjust my tactics. But the bottom line is oh, speaking of which, talking about this, it brings up a good point. And if you remember in the podcast, I was talking about at the Endocon game where I used the tray method.
Yeah.
I really did. Like, it was like I sat down at the table, I saw the 10 people, I realized how badly this was going to go. I'm like, there is no, and I look at the clock and I'm like, nah, this is going to go horribly unless somebody actually mans up and does something. So I decided to follow the tray method, and I did, and I got so many accolades, not only from Sean Patrick Fannin during and after the game, but some of the other players, so much so that I've been invited to a couple of different tables, but mainly because of, again, the method that I outlined, like 3 episodes ago?
Mm-hmm.
Give or take.
Yeah.
The main thing I think for our group, and I think myself and everyone else, the first thing for our group is that we really need to have an idea of what we can do. And I understand that a lot of us are playing out of our comfort zone character classes. And we're almost all magic-y with the exception of Othello, which I really want to get him a magic item that does nothing like useful, just so he can feel part of the group. like summon light breeze or something. I don't know. But for the rest of us, and when I have a problem, and again, it's one of the reasons I always eschew magic users, is because there are levels of complexity, and then you hit magic users. And magic users are usually retardedly complex no matter what the system is.
Mm-hmm.
This is an argument that Byron and I have on a daily basis.
Oh, I don't knock that it is. It's just I like that level of complexity sometimes.
I know.
Because I like being able to do what?
It drives me nuts sometimes, like with magic users. They're like, and every spell is customizable, and every spell can be expanded and maximized and extended and inverted and entroped or whatever. And the whole time I'm going, oh god. On the other hand, playing a beat stick isn't always the best thing either, because you get the dude. It's like, what do? I smash it. You were supposed to be ordering drinks at the bar. I smash it again. It's like, dude, for a warrior, or for warrior, everything looks like a nail. That's all they ever think about doing. But for mages, and our group is so magic heavy, the main thing that I have an issue with, the first thing that we all can improve on, and me too, because remember, I don't play magic users. Mm-hmm. And Kieran is nothing. It's all magic.
No, well, not really. I mean, he is a paladin, so he does have some magic and some special abilities, but he's nowhere like Puff's character, who is a sorceress.
True. But see, what you guys don't realize is that when I'm running him, while I'm waiting for the rest of you guys, I'm pulling up his spells. I'm reading his spells, exactly what they do. If you've ever noticed that whenever I use a spell, I'm reading to you the spell, because before my turn comes up, I have the spell open in the SRD. I have an idea of what it does, and I know what my role is, because I know for a fact that I'm weak on spellcasting. I don't do it. I don't like it. So I spent a lot of time out of game. I spent, when you said to make sure you have your spells list, I spent 3 hours that night going through every spell I had and selecting the ones that I wanted. 3 hours. Researching them, writing notes about them so I know exactly what to cast, when to cast it. And I think that's the first best thing that we can all do, is learn our freaking spells.
Which I am actually trying to work on, because we actually just leveled up Puff and Liz's character and most of Miri's, and I'm actually exporting their specific spell lists to them so that they know exactly which spells they've got access to, and they've got them right there so that they can, look at them, research them, get them to know them better. That's the main
Point of order. Point
okay.
of order. I have an apology to make to you and to the other players.
Okay.
I said that level 7 or 8, whatever not this one that we just did, the previous level was the most boring level up I have ever had. That is not true. This last one was the most boring. I got nothing.
Level 10 for a paladin?
I got nothing! Nothing! It was horrible. I'm like,
I thought they were supposed to fix that in Pathfinder.
Ooh. I got a skill and or HP bonus of +1. That was it.
I didn't get too much either this level up, but
You
I
got
think
blind sense. I don't want to hear it.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I got that.
No,
dude, you got an extra smite. You can smite 4 times a day now.
Woo, freaking who?
Not that you use it that often.
I only get to smite once because I knock out your biggest baddie with a single blow. I mean, why do I need the other 3?
It's true. Why he only needs one?
I need the one. Here's an idea. Here's what I did. You're talking about spells. I initially built him as a paladin to be kind of like the healer / protector of the group, and then I realized very quickly that no one in the group requires protection. So I actually retooled him, his spell list, to be mostly offensive, and of course I retooled them all to be done in a swift action, because our combat goes so fast now that if you don't get it off in a swift action, you're not getting it off at all. And if you're coming behind Othello or Kieran, you're not getting dacked anyway. So
if you're coming behind Kieran, Othello, or Hadassah.
Yes, Hadassah too. But what I was going to say is, we have we're going to be involved in different settings, because some of the times we're going to be doing more, in-city negotiating, and sometimes we're going to be more out doing, battles. And I'm actually creating multiple different spell lists. Key toward different scenarios to have them locked and ready. So in the morning, I'll have my default sort of utility list. But if I know I'm about to go into battle the next day, I have a separate spell list that I memorize for that specific situation. If I know that most of the game is going to be spent just sitting around a town or city negotiating things like that, I have a different spell list. Actually, I have multiple spell lists set up to memorize that for that morning, depending upon the situation I believe I'll be in.
Yeah. Actually, Tim was doing that in the Broken Sword campaign that I was running with. I don't think it was Pathfinder. I think it was D&D. Couple, like a year or so ago. He actually had a in-town spell list. He was playing a druid. He had an in-town spell list, a traveling spell list, a battle spell list, an investigative, exploring spell list. And so he's like, okay, what are we doing? Next day. Okay, we're traveling. All right, travel spell list. There we go.
Smart idea. It is a really cool idea.
Yeah, occasionally he would switch a spell or two depending on, the terrain we were going to be in or whatnot, or in case we thought that battle would ensue. He kind of mixed some of them, mixed 2 of them sometimes. But
that's actually a really cool idea. It takes a little bit of work, but I think it's worth it.
Yep.
So really, that's the first thing I would say is, and that's part of the train method. The first thing is know your character, what your character can do, and be able to call it up quickly.
Now with Puff, since she's playing a sorceress, her spell list is rather limited, but she has access to all of it at any given time. So what I recommended to her was something similar to what I actually did for the big baddie and the other big spellcaster in that battle that barely lasted a fucking round. In the fact of have an idea of what spell you're going to cast within the first few rounds of any combat.
Yes.
And for some of them I had okay, they would do this one or this one. It wasn't just he'll do this one, then this one, then this one. I was he could do this one. It was for the first spell or first 2 spells, I knew exactly what I wanted to cast because I wanted to set certain things up. And then it was, okay, then he can cast this one or this one, depending on how the battle was panning out. And then he could do this one or this one. And you can do that very easily, Puff, because again, like I said, with a sorcerer, your spell access is much more limited than, say, a wizard or especially a cleric or druid. But that also means, though, that you've got less to keep in mind. You know exactly what you can cast, and you can cast it any time.
Yeah.
So long as you can actually cast something. So, huh?
That should help. Having a limited number, but being able to cast a multiple, it should help you rather than being like the toolbox, like a mage who has to know like your spell list is like 30 spells long, and you have to sort of pick which ones you want. It's better to be in order the whole ease of use. Sorcery is better in Pathfinder D&D.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the first time I'm playing a spellcaster of any kind in Pathfinder or D&D or anything like that. Usually I'm basically playing Othello in girl form, where it's like I'm just gonna charge in and bust heads.
Yeah, which is why I recommended to you Sorcerer specifically, because I know they're a hell of a lot easier to do especially for a newbie, into spellcasting.
Well,
so,
bards
bards are similar to that too. Although bards have got wonky other abilities that although Miri's working with them great, they've got some wonky other abilities that make it a little hard for someone to play off the bat. But
no, and you're doing a great job as far as that goes. Again, playing I don't play mage characters either of any. I don't really like magic characters. I will use magic items, but magic users, I've never been a huge fan. Except in Shadowrun, and then of course in Shadowrun I play anything. So whatever.
Well, you had Hephaestus, but he had a shtick.
Yes, he did. He had a great shtick. I love Hep. Hep's the best character I think I've ever done in any Pathfinder D&D setting. Just because, what does he do? He makes stuff. He's not even a frontline fighter. He was an NPC. That's what he was.
Pretty much.
The second thing, and I've been thinking about this long and hard. In the not out of game, but in the role playing part of it, because in combat we have turn order initiated by or set by initiative, right?
Uh-huh.
It's pretty simple. Everyone rolls initiative, and then we go in that order. In social situations or out of combat situations, a lot of games run into this problem where without a structure, things tend to descend into insanity quickly. And I notice this at Taiki's all the time. I mean, it's like when combat ends and they actually have to talk like normal human beings, they lose all ability to function. I mean, if they're not bashing someone's skull in or shooting someone in the face, it seems like they lose the ability to be humans. So one thing we could consider doing, this would be a little bit on the game master, but there is the precedent for, I'm not saying turn-based social situations in the sense that we all roll initiative and then the first person gets to talk. That insanity. However, there is a precedent set for having sort of like turns dictated either by the GM or by the players. But let me give you an example. So let's say we're on board the ship, sailing, depending upon whether we're in the air or the water, and we happen to pass another ship. If we pass another ship, I'd hope we'd be in the water.
Yeah, because you pass another one in the air, something ain't right.
Exactly.
Because you are on the only airship that this world has.
That we know of.
That we know of.
That you know of.
So let's say we're passing a ship, and all of a sudden, a figure on the deck of the other ship, shouts, ahoy there, vessel, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that situation, and I'm going to ask you guys, which character in the group do you think would be best to address another nautical individual while on board ship?
Tass.
Most likely Tass being the captain. However, I could also say Anaya, because oftentimes, correct me if I'm wrong, but oftentimes it would be like the first mate or someone who would actually initially, make contact, not necessarily the captain themselves.
Very possibly. So we already know that's most likely going to be Tass or possibly Anaya if the captain is otherwise occupied at the time, correct?
Right.
Let's say we are standing in a great and ancient library, and there is the head librarian we're trying to talk to the head librarian about some specific esoteric magical something or other. Which of the characters do you think would be the person who would best initiate that conversation?
I'm gonna see what Puff says first before I.
I was gonna say, depending on the magic, it would either be my character Ella or Hadassah.
See, I was actually gonna say, especially if we're in a library, you would be first, but then Tass, being a multi-classed wizard,
I keep forgetting because I'm thinking Festia and not Tass, and I need to
Yeah.
remember that Festia is dead.
Well, she's a rogue wizard arcane trickster, but
She's Loki.
she is more of the studious magic than any of the others. So
So
I would say you first because you're the more prominent spellcaster. You're actually technically more powerful than she is, in the terms of what spells you can cast. But at least I think she might have just gotten to 4th level, so it might be up in the air. But so you would be first, but being the fact that she's a wizard, she's a bit more at home in a dusty library than just about anyone else.
Mm-hmm. True.
So let's say we were, I don't know, in the wilds, and we came upon a tribe of like primitive, like warrior, shaman or something like that, and they were a little skittish about us and our strange armor and clothes and stuff like that. Which character do you think would be best to initiate that conversation?
Hadassah.
Hadassah.
So, what if we were standing in an open field and a horde of raging orcs were charging at us? Who would be best to engage in the initial, aggressive negotiations?
Othello.
Yep.
This is what I'm talking about. Most conversations, most interactions between the characters and other people would be initiated by Anaya. If we're in a church, it would be initiated by Karen. If we're on board the ship, it would either be the Captain Tass or Anaya, if possible. In a musty library, it would either be your character, Ella, or it would be Tass. The point is that inherent in our characters lies the role-playing possibilities. And if we allow the individuals uniquely suited for the task in those situations to be the one to speak, and if when these conversations are being initiated, if the rest of us, get quiet and respect that person, then the role-playing aspect, I believe, will improve and go more smoothly, since there will be less talking over each other. Because in most situations, now, if we're all in a tavern and we're all just laughing and joking around, there is no real leader. Unless, I want to say leader, real spokesperson. Unless, of course, we get approached, and then if we look at the person approaching us, then we can determine amongst ourselves. And if there's any sort of question, either Anaya or probably Kieran would be the first to speak, or at least the first to designate someone else to speak. But inherent in our characters lies the direction of role play.
Mm-hmm.
It's something most groups never seem to grasp. They never seem to understand that. So. We're standing there and we're approached by a town constable, right? Let's say like a town watchman or whatever, and they're hey you, oi, what are you doing here? At which point, it would probably be better, if we were attempting not to get ourselves arrested, if someone like Kieran or Anaya addressed them, rather than perhaps Othello, who might intimidate the poor man into aggression, or Tass, who might just rob him blind. So.
Yeah.
So inherent in it, and I believe if we begin to do that, if we begin to think more like that in the roleplay aspect,
and I think part of the reason why, not only this group but just in any group, really, the why groups don't do that, at least what's come to my head right at the moment is kind of twofold. First is the fact of people are skittish. They even when they're in character, they can be skittish. So they don't really have the confidence to be just like, okay, because usually, at least in some groups, there is a full-blown designated leader, whether the leader knows it or not. Mm. And so therefore, everyone kind of looks to them first, even though I think it was Miri has said it on multiple occasions that a good leader knows when to delegate to something when he don't know what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And also there's the sense of, and unfortunately I kind of propagate this a bit more, and maybe I need to tone back just a little, but I've had issues where I've had people trying to hog the spotlight so much that I try to make sure that everyone gets at least a turn in the spotlight, or everyone is involved together, which unfortunately can even mean social situations where then you've got everyone trying to do something at once, and pure chaos ensues. So
it's one of those things where it's kind of like social awareness. You know, some people are better at social awareness than others. And in a group, you know, we need to be very aware of the social makeup of the group, because just like in people, you know, just like in combat, you know, the spellcasters have a role to play, the beat sticks have a role to play, the healer has a role to play, the tank, the DPS, everyone has a specific role to play. Also, in the role playing aspect, each of us has a role to play, and it's also better if we focus, when we're doing the role playing aspect, if we actually focus on the role play, not so much our own personal desires or our own personal side stories, but more on the group as a whole. That doesn't mean that everyone in every conversation has to talk. What it means is we have an objective to reach.
Mhm.
Use the best tool for the job in the current situation, and allow that tool to shine, and the rest of us will need to be quiet and take a back seat and allow people to step forward, because people right now, people tend not to talk if they, as we start to get off track, and we do get off track a lot, like in every game, as we start to get off track, I myself, as I said before, find myself having a thought or comment to say in game, but realizing that it's almost better just not to talk, so there are fewer voices. Make sense?
Yeah.
But if we allowed people to take the role that they are meant to play, like Ella, if when it comes into situations like, you know, first of all, dealing with dragons, in the Empire, when dealing with, you know, certain magical things, when dealing with knowledge-based stuff, you know, in areas where she shines, if the rest of us, you know, when we're approached by, you know, one of these individuals, if we all sort of step back and let her take a lead role and carry that conversation, then she can look. And then, how about this? So if she has a question, rather than us all talking over her, she can say, well, I look to so-and-so, what do you think? And just like you would in an actual conversation. And since we can't see each other, we have to emote what we are doing.
Yeah. I know definitely personally a time or two I've tried to do something, and then, you know, somebody else, I know Miri has jumped on once or twice where, oh, well, I'll do that too, which, fine. But then, you know, once the rolls happen, whatever we're rolling for, like, you know, if I'm like, oh, well, I'll do Knowledge Arcana or something like, you know, something that me and Miri had the same similar thing, or somebody else, and once the rolls happen, it's like, oh, well, you know this, this, and this, and then the other person kind of just starts going with it, and then I'm kind of like, oh, okay.
Think of it like acting, and this is something that, again, in a scene, you have the central actor or actors, and then you have the others. Like if you watch a TV program, not every actor is in every scene, and not every actor is the front of every scene. And I agree with that a lot of times. Another thing that gets me is like, you know, the whole part. It's like, well, what do you want to do? And they go around the room, and then one character will be like, well, I'm going to go do this, and half the other groups, no, I'm going to go do that too. And it's just like, people need to be committed to their course of action, rather than just jumping on whatever they think is the coolest thing to happen in the last 2 seconds. But, and we also really need to allow people to shine, like she said. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But if we think about it as actors in the scene, and as the GM, this is something that I try to enforce when I'm doing my game with Ricky and stuff like that, is you know, for example, when it comes up to sexual negotiations, when we go to Longtail, and I'll let that character take complete control of that. And I tell the other guys, well, you're going to stand over here in the street while she goes and, you know, gets the information you want, and it's all on her. And, you know, if one of the other players is like, well, I want to get, like, I'm sorry, no, you're going to wait here while she does her thing, because this is her chance to show her skills. Or, you know, when Hawksclaw is doing a tracking thing, Hawksclaw is out there doing the tracking thing, and all the other players want to tromp up there in heavy boots and help Hawksclaw track, and I'm like, well, that's great, but you have no tracking ability, you have no low light vision, and you're wearing heavy boots and plate armor, which means that if you do happen to stumble across a track, you'll obliterate it. So to even make it harder, just wait your turn, and we'll get to you when the time comes. Not every character has to be involved in every activity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, but like I said, that's something I think I need to enforce a bit, because usually I am very much try to make sure everyone is involved, even when they really don't need to be.
Yeah, and like
So.
a lot of times, you know, like with the example that I gave, I'll let it go because I don't want to. I don't want to make a stink about it or anything like that, because it's a silly thing to make a stink about, really. But then, like, a lot of other interactions that happen, like, the progressing things between Ella and Othello, Matt and I don't want to necessarily, take up any time in the game to do that stuff because, A, it's not progressing the game story at all.
Which I am appreciative that you guys are not minding doing some of that off screen.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, obviously, if something big happens, like, okay, he's hurt, I'm hurt, there's going to be something, but, we're totally cool with off scene and just letting you know or be a part of whatever we decide happened, because, again, it's not furthering the story or anything like that, and, everybody else will be sitting around waiting for us to get through, ooh, lovey-dovey.
I will give the biggest example of this happening in the entire game to date. Would you like to know when it was? It was in like the second or third game when we had exited the Necromancer's lair, my character's brother's lair, and we had noted that something was happening with Anaya. And I went to her in concern, being the paladin, had mentioned something to her about it, and she had said, that she felt different or whatever. And then I realized that she was uncomfortable, and so I decided, all right, well, let's go back to the city and we'll deal with it then. I don't know if we recorded that session. I hope we did. But if you listen to that session carefully, you will hear me as the situation got more and more out of hand and more people glommed on and more people started, like, poking at her, prodding her, questioning her, pouring energy, like, doing all this, and the game derailed to what's wrong with Anaya. And the whole time, I'm gently saying, why don't we leave this to a different time? Why don't we move along and get back to the city where the healers can look? And the party, that was it. Everyone glommed onto the idea, let's figure out what the puzzle of Anaya is, and the game derailed completely. And then it resulted in the explosion. But the bottom line was, I asked her a question out of concern. Every other character, or almost every other character, felt compelled, almost impulsively, to figure out what was going on right that very instant. And we stopped. Everything stopped until that happened. Even when, as I was trying very hard, because I realized that this was probably all this scrutiny wouldn't have been good for her. Nobody would have liked that. Imagine if you had some sort of, let's say, disease or some sort of genetic something or whatever, and someone in a group of your friends, you've been hanging out, and then one of them noticed your hand shakes a little bit. How would you like it if the entire party turned on you like sharks and began probing you, prodding you, questioning you, basically flaying you for everyone to see and pointing out all of your weaknesses? How would anybody have liked that?
That is true. I've had an instance where I did actually start shaking, and a bunch of people did kind of turn to me and go, "Are you having like some sort of a panic attack or anything?" In some instances, it's kind of a good thing because at least somebody's watching out for you. But then,
there's definitely something to say about a group's camaraderie and concern over one of their members. But I think Howard is right. I think it might have kind of gotten a little out of hand.
It did, and my character desperately tried calmly to get people to move along and to sort of change the tack. Completely ignored. So it's one of those times in which people talk about Kieran being the leader, but not really. Again, if I were the leader, I would have just ordered everyone back to the castle. But I didn't, because I'm not technically speaking the leader. And that situation derailed, things changed. But that, to me, is the biggest instance of what you were discussing about the glomming on. One person does something, and everyone pounces on it and has, doing their, it's like,
yeah.
And it just, in retrospect, I wish I'd never even mentioned it. Because I think the game would have worked better had I not.
I think specifically with that incident, though, it was played up on from the time we were in the lair to getting out that she wasn't, that there was something wrong, Like, it was, completely beaten into throughout the game that something was wrong with her, that she looked wrong. So after going through what we did go through, I think, it was natural for people to be concerned about her. But I do agree with you that, once it got to a point,
especially if I remember correctly, Howard, you had even specifically said something about the fact that we had just been in a necromancer's lair. that who knows,
Yes.
especially considering you had also fallen prey to
Yes.
one of his magical traps.
Yeah, so after you had one of the traps, I think, speaking from my character, coming from the magic background, we just got out of there. If something else had affected somebody, we needed to kind of know. So
I understand the reasoning behind it. However, the game derailed. As a player, I realized that, and as a character, I also realized that it was much safer to do this investigation where, not off on the side of the road, where we had no idea what was going to happen. But mainly for me, it was a player thing. I was trying to get the game to, because we got
Move
stuck.
along.
We got stuck on, and everyone, hyper focus. It happens so often. It's the ooh shiny thing.
Yeah.
And
like you said, everybody. Go ahead.
no, unfortunately, once a group gets caught into that, it's almost impossible to break away.
Yeah, because, I mean, like you said, everybody stopped, and I think, like you were saying earlier, if, there was a need for concern, let one of the people that have that more magic background assess situation, then let's go.
Yes.
Kind of deal. But then it turned into basically everybody in the party going,
Well,
let me try.
yeah, well, and because everyone in the party comes from different backgrounds, it does bring different perspectives and different options and opinions, but it wasn't in a controlled manner either. It was everyone just kind of, splaying it out. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Moving on to my third point. I do have points. Third point is, and it is the perennial problem of all role-playing games, well, after scheduled death,
Schedule death.
It is nice job, dude. It's exacerbated infinitely online, as we noted in the last one where we talked about online versus in person, is that when you're sitting around a table and you have visual cues, you see the people, you have volume level control, like all this sort of stuff, out-of-game chat can become distracting, but it's much easier to control. Online, where there is no visual cues, where the social cues are sketchy at best, and where people aren't like emoting what's in and out of game, the out-of-game conversation spirals into insanity ridiculously quickly, and it becomes a problem. And again, we're here to have fun, so we want to talk and want to have fun. However, one of the things that we talked about is using chat for out of the game and talking for in-game or vice versa. That way you have two different channels, two different mediums, and you keep them very separate. Now, unfortunately, and this is what and Byron and I talked about this, I usually do in-game typing, out-of-game chat, because people are impulsive when they want to be funny, a one-liner, and it's very difficult to one-line in text, so people tend to blurt.
Yeah.
So trying to do voice chat and out-of-game text almost never works. I personally never got it to work successfully because of the impulsivity of people. But the problem is that out-of-game chat quite often begins to, it's like kudzu. It begins to explode, and then at a certain point, we have to take a break, or Byron has to rein us in, as he has to do quite a bit. And again,
I have to rein my own ass in half the time.
I'm guilty of the omnivore. So, it's the podcast.
Broke me for 5 minutes.
You did break everybody. Everyone.
But therein lies one of the things that we really need to be concerned with, is that online, out-of-game stuff is just going to clutter the channel.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I definitely agree. There have been many a tangent going on. Just because, and we all do it. We'll randomly remember something. Oh, hey, funny story. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. And I am so freaking guilty of that, too.
We all are. Every single one of us have done it, and it's not a horrible thing, we're friends. Of course, we're going to be like, hey! But Howard has a point. We're specifically here to play a game, to progress a story. So,
I think about it, and I used an example before. I think about it as, you know, let's say we're like a volunteer like softball team, you know, like a community softball team, and
Mhm.
we're not professionals. We're not paid for this. Heck, we're part of a league with, like, you know, local churches and local, you know, stores and, you know, local body shops and stuff like that. And, you know, we're just a local community team. However, you know, if you're going to bother with, you know, putting on the cleats and putting on the uniform, buying the equipment, and showing up on Saturday to play, and setting aside 3 hours of your day to play the game, when you get there, yes, it's not. I mean, it's just a stupid game, but it's not just about you. It's about the other people in the group, and that's the thing about role playing, which I've always sort of had an issue with. Is I I consider myself a professional. I really, when I'm role playing, I try to be professional. I try to bring my A game every single time because it's not about me. It's about the group. It's about the group experience. And when you have people that are more concerned about sitting around and having fun talking rather than playing the game and being their characters. You know what I would love to see? One time, I've never experienced it, but one time I would like to see a game entirely in character. No out-of-game chat. Where everything is done in character. Could you imagine, like, being in an immersive environment where everything you basically first person, all in character for like 3 hours, and you, like, could you just imagine that? Like get how deep you would get into the game if you weren't being broken by, like, the, you know, out of game things getting you out of the mindset?
that would be so awesome. Oh my god, so awesome.
But we don't seem to be able to do it. And it's what's funny is that we don't think about it that way. But the out of game comments break us out of character, and it takes us longer to get back into character, and it makes it harder for us to do what we do.
It does. It does.
So, you know, when you take the three things that I've said, you know, all together, you know, having a real good concept of your character, the mechanics, whether it's spellcasting or whether it's, you know, beating people in the face, whatever it happens to be. When you have a concept of your out-of-game social role to play, and we all actually play that role, just like in a group of friends. You got the talky friend, you've got sort of like the wallflower friend, you've got the social friend, you got the go-with-the-flow friend, you got the tech-savvy friend, and everyone, you know, when you go out to party, when you go out to, everyone sort of has a role they fall into. And if we do that with our characters and allow the characters who have the skills in the particular situations to take charge, and if we keep mindful of the deleterious effects of out-of-game chatter can have, I'm not saying have no out-of-game chatter, but I'm talking about keep that in mind. That way we're not talking over each other out of game, we're not talking each other in game, and everyone has an idea of what their role is.
Mm-hmm.
Those three things would infinitely improve not just yours and mine, but everyone's role play. And that's, if you were asking me the three things that to do to improve your role play, that's the same three things I would suggest to myself. Those three things.
Wow. I was kind of expecting a bit more than those three things, but cool.
Well, I was actually about to say, Howard, if you have anything that was like specifically to Puff and how she specifically, you know, could do better or not. I mean, if not, then that, you know, that's fine. But I was just wondering if you did.
In reality, here's the thing. The bottom line is most people, you and a couple of other people, tend to do a lot more out-of-game chat than the others do. Liz almost rarely is doing out-of-game chat, and when she does, she's usually just playing off something else other people do. I've also noticed Matt is also very, very seldom to see out-of-game chat. I've just noticed that and usually he's riffing on something someone else says. I am much more guilty of it than he is. You and a few of the others tend to be a lot more out-of-game talking, a lot more than the rest of us do. But then again, everyone does it. So it's not specific to you. As far as knowing your character, I think one of the best people, one of the people who are tailored to the character best is Matt. Matt runs Othello like a well-oiled machine, and it's a little frightening to watch. I'm not quite as good, but then again, I'm not used to spellcasters. But I try to make it up with doing a lot of prep work and a lot of research, and trying to always be prepared ahead of time. I'm still trying to get used to the whole paladin thing because I've never played paladins before, odd enough. So there is that, but you're playing a spellcaster, and every spellcaster I've ever met has problems with this. It's just inherent to spellcasters. because it always comes up, all right, I want to cast X spell. What exactly does this do? Well, let's check book 3. All right, book 3 says, nope, we got to check book 12 for the spell effect. Okay, but I'm going to use this. It's going to, it's lightning. Okay, we got to check the core book to find out how lightning affects, lightning bypasses armor. So let's go to the arms and armor equipment book to check out how this magical armor is impact, and it's like after a while, it's like, Jesus, just shoot the guy. So spellcasters inherently have a difficulty, which means you, me, and all the other casters in the group have to work doubly hard in order to be aware of what we can do and have it ready before the turn. Asking, when your turn comes up, being like, well, what do I want to do? Whenever I'm in a group and I hear that, especially from a caster, I just head desk. Because I know there's about a 5-minute conversation in there that's going to be about, any particular spell and about, how, these things affect it. But everyone in the group, and it's not specific to you, everyone in the group needs to be more socially aware, characterly socially aware, because none of us have any, the scene where we step off the boat and the Dockmaster walks up is like the classic example of the biggest cluster ever. If I were that Dockmaster, I would have just had the guards just push us off the end of the pier and just off into oblivion. I mean, heavily armored group. We were clearly drunk. We were clearly
with a body.
What?
With a body.
With a body. No, a heavily armed group of drunks show up in a controlled dock with a dead body and are basically staggering over each other. No one has a straight story. It was an absolute cluster. I mean, Byron was being a really generous GM, because if I'd been the GM, we would have all been in jail or just thrown off into the sky, because we were acting like total and freaking morons. As a party. That scene just goes over my head when I think about these sorts of things, but it was because of social unawareness. Because one character began to talk, looked to another character to talk, and then everybody talked. No one had a straight story, no one was a spokesperson, and it degenerated into insanity. But it's something that if one person in the group is socially aware and the rest aren't, it doesn't matter. It's kind of like herd immunity. You at least need to lead over half the people to be socially aware, otherwise it makes no difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
So, specifically to you, because you're a spellcaster, yes, you need to know your stuff better. But that's not you, it's any spellcaster in our group. Out of game chat, you do a little bit more than the rest of us, but then again, you've never broken the GM for 5 minutes, so I hold the record on that. And as far as being socially aware, no, not specific to you, because we all need to do. It's just something that we have to learn how to do. We need to start learning how to, not initiative passes, but taking turns during role play. Mm-hmm. And we need to come up with a way of cleverly, gently passing the torch. I talk to somebody and I turn to you and I say, hello, or Lady Amberfawn, what would you have to say about that? And then you would wax philosophical a moment and be like, but I'm only one, magical perspective. Hadassah, do you have your own perspective on this? And Hadassah would say, yes, but perhaps we should speak with Captain Tass, because she knows far more about these sort of that, rather than person says, well, what do you think about this? And then everyone just starts shouting at them.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. With the spells, I did figure out one of my problems with that. I would, before my turn comes up, I would Google, whatever the spell, Pathfinder, and look it up. But I wasn't getting the same descriptions and everything as what I guess was the official wordings, I guess. And again, newbie spellcaster here.
Yeah,
but,
I represent that.
But Byron actually exported all my spells with their descriptions with me, with my character sheet last night, so that is going to be an immense help, so that now I've got the same description that he's going to be going by, so I'll have a better understanding.
I was also going to recommend, and I'm more than willing to do this, because everyone knows that I love playing spellcasters, and so I know Matt has come to me for advice before. And this comes into play with knowing your spell list, because I know one thing that does slow down newer spellcasters is not fully understanding not only not fully understanding the spell, but not fully understanding how the spell would interact with the current situation and the combat.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that just comes from experience, really. And I'll fully admit that also, I mean, there are some spells that I even gave, I think, you that, like, I don't fully know, like, I don't fully remember off the top of my head everything that they do. But especially considering, you know, with Pathfinder, they've changed some things here and there. There's some new spells, yada yada. So, huh?
So I hear.
So what I was going to offer was, if you want to take some night this week, like maybe tomorrow, because I was gonna want to try to make sure Miri picked her spells for when she leveled up, because that's the last thing she needs to do to make sure she's leveled.
Okay.
And I'd be more than happy to go over your spells with you. Be like, you're like, okay, because remember, I was the one that initially gave you your spells.
Yes.
So I had a plan for them, kind of.
Okay.
At least I think. I mean, I knew you liked fiery, explodey. You know, that's because you were like, I want fire. You know, Hogan Taman Sarah give me fire. You know, so but I picked, you know, because I, as a spellcaster, I always try to make sure I've got something that can be useful in just about any situation if I can help it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I don't. It's been a while since I've looked at your spell list, so I think I kind of did that with you. So if you want, I can, you know, you can be like, okay, this spell, why did you give it to me? I was like, well, it does this, you know, this. You can use it like this. You can use it like this. You can do this. You know, but you know, start tapping me for my experience in spellcasting to try to help make sure you're a better one. And it may just be like, you know, why'd you give me this one? I was like, because it has fire.
Okay.
You know, it's to blow something up, but only in a slightly different way than this spell. You know.
Okay, so this is the more finesse, whereas this is the big bada boom.
Yeah, because actually, like, I know there's like some capabilities that I specifically gave to you. Now, granted, it may also be because of the fact of the situation just not really being right for it. But there have been some things I specifically gave you capabilities for that you haven't even used. And part of me is kind of like, I know I gave her that shit. What happened to it?
And this is going to segue into the next thing. This is also a completely different role for me, not just the spellcaster-wise, but in essence, we have 3 main characters that are clearly more of the offensive. So I feel like, you know, I'm going more defensive since I'm supposed to be in the back kind of slinging.
Well, that's not defensive. That is, you are artillery.
Okay.
Artillery!
I was waiting for it. You are artillery, whereas Hadassah, let me lay it out this way. And I'll use Festia because Tass is new to the group and hasn't quite found her niche with the group yet, because we've only had like 2 sessions with her. Othello and Kieran are your frontline skirmishers.
Mm-hmm.
They are the front line. They are the line. They are, you know, when you order a forward march, they are at the front. When you order an attack, they are the ones that go first. They are the ones that hit the enemy head on.
And
you know, face to face. So
that is where I'm used to being character-wise.
Yeah, that you're used to being on the front line, and now you're having to deal with the fact that you're not. Now,
I'm completely.
Hadassah, I would say, Kieran. Correct me if I'm wrong on my military vocabulary here, Howard. Kieran and Othello are actually, you know, frontline infantry.
Yes.
Hadassah.
We're heavy infantry.
Yeah, Hadassah is more of the skirmisher.
Correct. Hadassah.
Because she's very versatile with the shape changing and her druidic spells, and she's got a big ass fucking club to begin with. She's more of a skirmisher. She can go where she feels she needs to, and you know, soften the enemy up or just outright take it out, you know, if she wants. So yeah, she's more of the skirmisher. To be honest, from what I'm remembering of how I built your character, you could be a skirmisher too.
Mm-hmm.
Could be. It's not that necessarily you have to be, but like I mean, I know you specifically wanted a crossbow for range, and I gave you some magic arrows.
Mm-hmm.
But because you're a dragon disciple, you've got claws and a bite attack and a breath weapon. You've got some close range weapons naturally to you, and I gave you a magic item or two to enhance those,
Mm-hmm.
to make those better. So in case stuff got close to you, because I'm always a firm believer of have a range and have an up close weapon.
Yeah, unfortunately, battle-wise, the only time my character's been up close and personal with anything was the fight with Kayla, and I'll be quite honest, Ella pulled her punches because that was supposed to be her best friend.
Yeah, well, and again, like I said, it may have just been that the situations haven't really called for everything I gave you to be to be utilized. But you could be a skirmisher.
Uh-huh.
Anaya is support.
Okay.
That is not only what the bard, one of the best things the bard is good for. The bard is actually is kind of a jack of all trades. They're pretty decent at a fight if they have to get up close. They've got enough magic to them that they can definitely pull a backup for a spell slinger, if not be the primary if there isn't one. The charisma's good enough that they're usually the face. They've usually have enough in the terms of stealthy skills. They have good lord, their skill access is seconded only by the rogues. They've got the second largest class skill list, period. And sometimes even then, I think, depending on if it's like 3.5 or Pathfinder, they might actually beat the rogue, because I think most knowledge skills are actually class skills for them, which I know the rogue isn't. But the bard overall, the best role that the bard fits for is support, and that's shown by what kind of spells their spell list has, as well as their bardic abilities. I mean, notice the fact that 9.9 times out of 10, first thing out of Anaya's mouth is I kick up the one, inspire courage to give everyone bonuses to their shit.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she's gotten feats and abilities now that she can start spell slinging while still doing that, I think is partially broken, but it's cool as hell. So I mean, she is support,
Mm-hmm.
and because we don't have a dedicated cleric in the group, that's not to say we don't necessarily have a dedicated healer. We actually don't have a dedicated healer. We've got 3 people that can kind of fit that role, though, if necessary. Hadassah's got cure spells. Kieran can cure with his lay on hands abilities and his channel positive energy. And Anaya can actually cure light wounds. Is a spell that the bard has access to. So she can kind of fill that role if necessary as well. Festia, when she was there, she was the dedicated healer. And actually, she was also your rogue. So her whole thing was to sneak around when necessary. She was your assassin. She was her whole thing was sneak around and find the best, try to find the chink in the enemy's armor and exploit the shit out of it. And now, usually, sometimes when Liz plays a cleric, she plays a full-out, front line healer, which means she's up there at the front line with Kieran and Othello, bashing things heads in, and a walking suit of armor so that she can't really get touched, so that she can get to the people that need the healing the most. But as Festia, being the sneak, she could sneak around and still kind of do that, which is one of the reasons why she usually likes that combination of classes. Just Festia wasn't working for her. The way Tass is going to work is very similar, but instead of healing, Tass is an illusionist. So she's like, the freaking battlefield stage magician. she's going to one that's going to be distracting the shit out of everyone and then exploiting the holes that creates, and and creating holes for other people to exploit as well. You are primarily, and like I said, I mean, there are, you can be a skirmisher too, but you primarily being the primary arcane spell slinger, you are the artillery. The artillery's job is to sit back and just chuck shit at the enemy until everything stops moving. Which, actually does fit your mentality somewhat. Just you're used to doing that up front, and you're having to get used to doing it from behind. You also do have to at least be somewhat concerned, although I think there's some feats that we might be able to look into when you gain another feat, which I think is in a level or two, to look into to allow you to start doing something about this. In the fact that, unfortunately, especially with some of your fire spells, there are a lot of area effect,
Yeah.
which means you run the risk of possibly hitting your friends too.
Yeah. So like, I have to stop and see where everybody is, especially if my turn doesn't come up. Like I'm towards the end, I have to be like, all right, who's where? What can I do?
And in which case, I think it was this level. But I'll double check. I did check that every couple of levels or so you can switch out spells.
Mm-hmm.
You can be like, you know what, I don't really like this spell, I'm going to forget the spell and get another one. There are the lower level spells. So if we go over your spell list, say tomorrow, and you find that you've got nothing but area effect spells, you might want to be like, you know what, I want a little more pinpoint accuracy. I want something to affect, because usually when I think artillery, I think area effect.
Mm-hmm.
So I might have built your spell list, to do so. Unfortunately, again, now in some cases, and I think Howard will even agree with me at least a little on this. In some cases, you may have to do friendly fire.
Mm-hmm.
It just sometimes it's going to happen.
A good commander knows when to and when not, but yes.
Yeah.
However, I will let you do this. If you're ever in a situation where you feel that the best option is friendly fire, you can always ask Karen, and I will tell you whether that way it'll be on me. That's what a good leader does. I'll be more than happy to give you the orders to hit friendly fire if it's necessary.
Not only that, but also as a paladin, his saving throws are some of the best.
Oh yeah, you can be all day.
Yeah, because he gets to add his charisma bonus to his saving throws on top of what he gets from his class and his regular ability scores.
Nice.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about a paladin. Not only that, but also he's got a shit ton of hit points. And in Pathfinder, his lay on hands ability, he can do it on himself as a free action.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a move action or a standard action like normally. If it's on himself, he can do it as a free action. So which means you could bomb him while you're bombing other people, and then he can quickly heal himself up any damage he takes and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So and this is one thing that I think our group overall needs to. Not only does everyone need to have a good a great understanding of what their own character does, but I think to some extent the group needs to know a few more of the finer points of what everyone else's characters can do.
Yeah.
Because like I just said, I mean, even if you didn't warn Howard, if you're going to go area effect, Howard's definitely the one you want to try to catch into it, because out of him and Othello, he's got the better chance of surviving it.
Yeah.
So, but we've really gone off on a tangent, but
that definitely clarified for me, at least, because I'll fully admit that figuring out my military strategic role, I had no idea what really I'm supposed to be doing. And again, new thing.
The four core classes in a fantasy RP, specifically D&D, but this actually works for just about any fantasy RP. Your four core classes are your rogue, your warrior, your healer, and your wizard, which is your artillery.
Mm-hmm.
The warrior's the front line. The rogue is the one that sneaks around and tries to exploit things as they see them, as well as also to deal with your traps. Your healer is to make sure everyone stays alive, and your wizard is supposed to be your big boom. I mean, honestly, out of any character, your wizard is supposed to have your highest, what was it, DPS, damage per second, which is an MMO term.
Mm-hmm.
Your wizard in most role-playing games, specifically D&D, but in most role-playing games, at least how I see it, unless you're a specialty wizard that doesn't do something like this, which is fine, your wizard is supposed to pretty much have the high DPS, because you're supposed to be hitting as many targets as possible with as much damage as possible, because that's what your spells do, and especially your character in particular, because that's what you wanted. So, but like with like Liz being the illusionist, that's not what she's supposed to do. What she's supposed to do is just confuse the shit out of everyone, and then and then stab them in the back. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well. I mean, again, that definitely helps because now I got a clear idea of what my role is supposed to actually be.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I didn't make that clearer when I initially created the character and gave it to you, but
totally not your fault. Again, first time,
Well, the fact that it was your first time casting, I really should have taken you under my wing a bit better, and I apologize for that.
And I could have stepped up and asked more. Like I was
Yeah,
trying
true.
to do myself, and I think that's where a lot of not really exactly putting myself where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
Within the group.
Well, and again, though, like I said, I mean, you do still have options. Because with your other abilities you have, you could join Hadassah in the skirmishing. But there is also, at least with the way I've been designing the fights recently, there aren't exactly enough enemies to go around.
Yeah. This is true. So then I'm kind of left going, what am I supposed to do? All right, example-wise, when we were flying to Arcadia, and we encountered the Dragon Sorcerer guy. By the time it got to my turn, initially I was going to, cast Fear to try to, eliminate some of our enemies, make them run away or whatever. Most of them were already slaughtered down by the time it got to me because, well, that's how this group rolls. So then I was sitting there going, well, okay, now I can't do my idea really. What do I do now? So that's an area where I definitely seem like I have a lot of problem with. I have an idea, and then it comes down to my turn, and it's made completely void by whatever, which is fine. I don't know how to quickly. Yeah, I don't know how to quickly go. Okay, well, now I'll do this.
Well, what you did decide to do was, in my opinion, tactically accurate. You decided to go after the spellcaster, which usually one of the best. Spellcasters have two main enemies. Other spellcasters, because one spellcaster tends to know what another spellcaster can do, and that's one spellcaster may not know exactly what the other spellcaster has up their sleeve. And as I actually explained to you, I think it was yesterday or so, spellcasters can counterspell. I don't use it often. I haven't seen it used often because without some feats, it tends to be kind of a pain in the ass. But it is a possibility. The other one is actually someone who can close distance and beat to face quickly. That's the other spellcaster's worst nightmare, because as much as I hate to still admit it, and as much as you all have frickin' proven, spellcasters are squishy.
However, I do have, like you said, I do have the bite and claw attack that I can counter somebody coming up trying to bash me in the face.
Well, and a breath weapon, which, unless you're actually used to a monster having it, you're not used to seeing that coming out of a frickin' player character. You're not used to seeing a hero just all of a sudden just spew fire.
It's gonna happen.
It can, but
she's gonna get pissed off, and it's gonna happen eventually. I'm saving that for a good one, but like I said, I don't have a military-ish background. I don't really know tactics or anything like that, and neither does Ella. Ella's
well, yeah,
essentially kind of a little comfortable or whatever.
She never served in an army. She went out on her own.
Mm-hmm. So,
to understand where her power came from, I wouldn't expect her to.
Yeah. So, my thing is that when we get into a battle, I think she really is waiting more for, orders. Maybe, possibly. And she really does. Kieran's the leader. To her, Kieran is the leader.
I will be happy to take a leadership role. I just fear stepping on people's toes. I really would be happy more than happy to give commands in battle, and things would go a lot differently
I'll be honest.
if we survived if the first enemy survived.
I'll be honest. That would help me a lot because like I said, I don't know tactics or anything like that. So
Well-
I'm gonna sit there and go, well, this is what I want to do, but is this going to actually work?
Well, I hope that when I go over your spells, that'll help you some with deciding that initially without needing outside help. But on top of that, and being able to quickly adjust to the situation is obviously something that just needs to be learned.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, I know Howard has been actually almost deathly afraid of taking on full leadership role because of the fact that he doesn't want to overshadow anyone else.
Yeah, with the whole Anaya thing, there were some comments made after the fact about me taking unilateral action, and since then I've taken no unilateral action, period.
Unfortunately, dude, you tend to be one of extremes. Sometimes you need to find the middle ground.
I'm a creature of extremes, one of the things I need to work on.
So.
I'll be honest. I actually like that he does that. I mean, obviously, if Ella was in the position to do that, I think I can step up, but she's not, because in her mind, Kieran's the prince. He's like way up here, everybody else is down here. You do what he says because he's the fucking prince.
Oh, you're gonna love the game later then.
Is he not the prince?
I'd be, like I said, I would be more than happy. Yeah, quiet, dude. I'd be more than happy to assist and maybe take in combat that lasts longer. Incidentally, it's interesting you should.
I'm gonna try.
That artillery has two main focuses. Incidentally, makes it really easy. Artillery has close support and counter battery fire. Counter battery fire involves taking out the most powerful enemy emplacements, i.e., siege weapons or enemy spellcasters. Close range support means hitting the guys that are threatening your front line, i.e., dropping a bomb on me so it nukes the guys around me. Those are your two main things: counter battery fire and close infantry support.
Yeah, especially considering your spells actually have the best range of any weapon that the group has.
Yep, so you can bomb them from a distance.
Yeah, there is no bow, there is no crossbow that can do the distance and the damage that your spells can.
If we can ever get into a situation where we have distance to work with, the plan would be to pull into a phalanx where I and Othello take a centerpiece and have Hadassah shift so she can flank, have behind us have Anaya boosting everyone, and have you behind her raining fire down on them as they approach, weakening their lines, and then targeting their spellcasters, and then having Task do whatever the hell Task does. Sneaking up and stabbing people in the kidneys, most likely.
Okay, well, how about this? In some situations, it's going to be completely obvious, what I should do. Like when we were flying to Arcadia and everybody was already killing things, so I went after the other sorcerer.
Wizard.
If it's not so obvious what I need to be doing, because again, I'm.
Well, it may the problem with where that line of thought is going is Howard may not notice that it's not obvious to you. So what you may need to do is send Howard a whisper. I
was about to say I can either add a game chat in the window, just type in, "Hey, I'm not quite sure, tactic wise, what I need to be doing here."
I will be more than happy to assist you at any time, and glad to do so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, I did have one. We've gone on for quite a long time, but I did have one important question that I wanted to ask.
Okay.
And so this would be for me my final point.
Okay.
I'll preface this by saying, here's my answer to this question. Kieran,
start off with your answer first.
Yes. Kieran has a single overriding focus. His focus is to face the dragon specifically and to defeat him. Or her, however, I don't know what gender this is. It, all right? More importantly, all other pursuits, romantic pursuits, even economic pursuits, friendships, everything else matters less to him or little to him because in reality, he doesn't believe he's going to survive the final battle.
Mm-hmm.
He honestly doesn't. It's not that he has a death wish, it's that he is preparing himself. This is his journey of preparing himself to die so that the world can live. Everything he does, every action he takes, every moment, every breath is focused toward a single overriding goal of getting the party to the last battle, holding back the enemy long enough so the rest of you can bring it down, and most likely dying in the process. And that's it. That's his character motivation, everything about him wrapped up in a nutshell. You understand that one fact, everything else makes sense. My question to you is, what is Ella's character concept, character motivation? What is the central driving theme which propels her forward?
Definitely obviously, this is a threat to the world, and it has to be taken care of. We're the only ones that can do it, and she's going to see it through to the end. She, like Othello, definitely realizes that, like Kieran, realizes that they're not going to make, it's obvious that not all of them are going to make it. We already lost Vestia, which Ella actually kind of blames herself for, but that's neither here nor there.
Trust me, you're not the only one who feels that way.
I think most of the group does.
Yeah. I think we all kind of do at this point.
Sorry.
But yeah, everything with Othello is, again, they are just two people getting to know each other. If it falls into that category, there's probably going to end up being a whole conversation of, do we really want to take this here knowing one of us or both of us are going to probably die? So that's more of the players are going, oh, they'd be cute, but not, the character is, definitely.
Well, the characters are definitely taking their time on it, which is actually I fully respect and enjoy. Because I know it got discussed before that you two specifically weren't like, oh, we think they'd be cute together, so they're going to start banging already. And it's like, no, you're actually playing it out.
Well, let me suggest. So your character is one of the more complex we have, because there's, of course, the end of the world. However, you also have the burgeoning relationship with Othello. You also have the origin of your character, Birth, and you have your relationship with the Empress. The fact is that that your home, like your homeland, is shifting. So you have a lot of moving targets you're trying to hit all at once.
Yes, a lot of with defeating the demon dragon is basically a lot of sticking it to my Empress, saying, "Yeah, bitch, you should have listened." Figuring out my origin is probably next in line, but not anywhere near above the mission. Ella is fully committed to this group, the cause, and if she has to, she's going to lay down her life.
What I'm saying, though, is you have a lot on your plate. You have a lot of different threads to pick up. And to be honest with you, so far in our games, we don't actually get much done. We spend most of our time joking around laughing. And so you only have, in the 4 hours that we play, you only have about an hour to an hour and a half, if we're lucky, of actual role play. The rest of it's spent figuring out rules, out-of-game stuff, technical issues, whatever it happens to be.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Bane of my existence.
Yeah, oh God. So what I'm saying is, I would take some time to really think about your character, your character's action motivations in each session. You have, like I said, you have your origin, you have your relationship with the Empress, you have your burgeoning relationship with one of the other characters, in addition to the last battle. You have a lot going. And one of those things is, for a character concept like that, it might get schizophrenic for you if you don't have some kind of A, priority system, and B, I don't want to say plan of attack, but some sort of idea about how you're going to move forward, like goals you want to set for yourself and things that you and Byron need to talk about so that he can weave it into the story so that you're not running off in different directions. So, for example, your origin thing. You got the information, you got the emblem. We're trying to find something out. You were doing the origin thing, and there was a little bit of schizophrenia there about where we were going and doing what. Not your fault, actually. You were trying to go with a role play, but the game was going one way. Byron gave you a tangential sort of whatever. You had an opportunity. You took it. Good for you. But there seems to be a sort of a disconnect or discord between your character's goals, which there are a plethora, as I've pointed out, and Byron's plan how it interweaves. Because Byron, and Byron's got a bunch of us. Each character seems to have their own agendas, whatever. I know that Tass wants her ship back. She wants to go around pirating. Othello, I'm assuming, wants to get back and protect the land, and he's of course a relationship with you and the dustpan.
I knew he was going to bring that up.
Wait, did you just say he wants to have a relationship with me and the dustpan?
Yes. Anaya, of course, has her magical abilities, as well as, she sees herself as not being like a lord and a lady like the rest of us, and her moving up in society, her spy thing going on. Like, you all have all of these things, but if there is not a cooperation with a GM, and if there is not a cohesive plan, it's going to become chaotic for all of us, because every time we hit a situation, everyone's going to be going off in different directions, and there's no cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
Breaking off into groups, which I constantly try to do, is try to pair people up, get people to work together toward different goals, cooperative goals. There's got to be more cooperation. There's got to be more of an idea. Each person, each player has to have an idea of their character's motivation and what frickin' direction they're going in, so that we don't get... I'm not saying don't pursue all of them. Maybe pursue them in order. Maybe pursue them, there's got to be a plan, and you guys have got to work with Byron on it. All of you.
Well, what I was actually going to recommend, and I'll post this in the Epic Game thread once we're done with this. And I usually ask this before. I usually ask this with most games, but I'm not entirely sure why I didn't do it with this one. Is I usually ask for at least one short-term and one long-term goal from every character, so that way I know kind of the course, not only just in the campaign, but just the course that each individual character wants to set, so that I can try to work it in there. And like I said, I usually do it. I don't know why I did this time. Maybe I was actually thinking everyone would be too focused, and, well, I really should have known better.
No, and that's one of the other things that I'm beginning to see is because the character goals and the actual goal, it's becoming, we hit points, and it's like hitting quicksand, because we become too sporadically focused. No fault of our own. It's just kind of the way the game goes. But if everyone had a very strong core direction and they had a plan of attack, and if we talked about it, why? I don't understand this. Let's say you're on vacation with your family in Europe, right? And you decide to go down to the local pub. Would you just F off and just walk off on your family without telling them where you're going? No! No moron would do that. You tell your party where you're going. But in role-playing games, why do player characters never figure that out? They just scatter like rats from a sinking ship, and there's no communication. Would you really just leave your friends in the middle of a city and just go F off somewhere to go some museum and never tell them where you were going? What kind of a dick are we? But player characters do that consistently.
Yes.
I don't know how many times I've explained to them, you're a party. If you're going to the library to investigate something, you've got to tell your buddy. Have a travel buddy. Tell them where you're going. But we don't do that.
Better yet, actually, with Puff's game on Saturday, Miri told us the rules that her mother had developed to survive a investigative horror game. Rule number 1 is you never go off alone. Rule number 2 is you never go off alone. Rule number 3 is anything that can be investigated at midnight can be equally as investigated at high noon.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are going somewhere, make sure at least one other person knows where the hell you're going.
Honestly, that should be the rule for our game. I so often in this game and every other game, people are like, the GM's like, what do you do? Well, I'm going to go to the library. And as a GM, I'm like, did you tell anyone you're going to the library, or did you just walk off on your friends? You are a dick. You, sir, are a dick. They have no idea where you are. They're getting stabbed in the back over here. You're off at the library. No one knows where you are. You're the freaking healer.
I don't think anybody's actually done that in this game. Just walked off without telling anybody. Have they?
Some people have tried, but I usually be like, so you're telling someone where you're going, right? They're like, oh, yeah, we'll go and tell so-and-so first.
Yeah,
but they've tried, but I usually catch it, and I'm like, you're telling someone, right? And they're like, yes, we're telling someone.
I believe the new rule should be anyone who goes off alone without telling at least one other party member should just die. Character. We find their corpse later, starts an investigation. One or two characters die, that'll never happen again, right?
Well, that's to say, I don't think death. I don't think at first death. Again, you're a person of extremes. However, a massive beatdown that they can't get out of once or twice will
Yes.
definitely
Punish them.
get them down to 1 hit point, and then the enemy runs off.
Have them robbed of all their cool items.
Yeah, that can. And for some characters, that's easily done.
So what I'm saying is, everyone needs to really, really, really have an idea of what the hell they're doing. What is Othello's goal? Like, I mean, other than getting in Ella's robes.
Well, that's a new goal.
I'm gonna
Actually,
be honest. I
as
think
far as go ahead, Puff.
I was gonna say, doesn't everybody kind of have one thing that's kind of going on as either a little secret that kind of ties into the story? Like, I'm assuming that my, strange birth or whatever it
Your
is,
lineage.
my lineage is going to have some tie-in with this story some way, somehow. I don't know exactly what. I don't know how to go about keeping the main goal, but also letting her figure this stuff out.
Well, I've got a recommendation for you.
Okay.
In all honesty, Ella has exhausted every lead that she has access to right now when it comes to specifically her lineage.
That's what I figured at this point, which is why the only thing outside of the actual main goal of the group that I had even a remote concern about was her parents, and only because Kayla, best friend, knows her parents are probably killed parents.
Well, which I might do something, because you have talked to me about that before, too.
Yes.
And I might do something to kind of slip something in to just basically alleviate your worries so we can move on.
Yes, please do.
Okay, well, especially if you're telling me to do that, then in which case I'll probably have some messenger or something just come and find you and be like, hey, is this your parents? Everything's doing fine. We haven't heard from you in a while.
I was gonna say if we want to say after I figured out Kayla was part of it and I like sent them a letter or something. If you want to say that, that's cool. Just
maybe. Because also you've got that one Lord. Seeing what he can find out. So until he finds out something else, pretty much you've reached the end of your rope when it comes to your lineage thus far, because so you really don't have to worry about that much anymore for now.
Okay, and that's fine. But I'm saying like when it comes up, like when something comes up that's a lead, how am I supposed to proceed doing that without kind of derailing everybody else?
Well, honestly, it kind of depends on the situation of how it comes about.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something that's very time sensitive, and I'm glad Howard has done this, because unfortunately I as a GM get sidetracked with some of the side quest stuff. I sometimes have that very Final Fantasy, video game role playing mentality of you can go off and do all the side quests and the main plot will still be there. That's not supposed to be the way it is with this game. There is supposed to be a urgency because of the fact of y'all don't know how much time you have before he gets free.
Uh-huh.
And when he does, if y'all aren't prepared, y'all are pretty much up a shit creek. And I'm glad that Howard has tried to keep that going. And I applaud him for it. Thank you, dude.
You are more than welcome.
But there are some lull times, because obviously, like when you were first at the Golden Empire, y'all had some time. You had to wait for when your audience was. That's when you should be thinking more on the side quest stuff, when you have the time.
And that's what I did, because that's when we found the emblem and everything, so that was that. And then the only other time I brought up was with Malchius, because he's part of that. So, and I think,
he's part of the royal family.
And I think the problem was, I think the problem was that initially I wanted to have a conversation about it, but then we forgot, and then we had to throw it in somewhere else in the game.
Yeah, that can happen. But yeah, sometimes you may have to deliberately put a pause on yourself when you think up of something or you know really want to kind of to go and investigate something. If it's gonna distract from the main plot, you may have to put a pause on yourself and just write a note and just basically be like, and you can like hell, and you can even do that. Say that your character writes a note, give it to me, and basically like I'm going to give this to someone to then have it, make its way back to Malchius or something because I thought of this, and there it's done.
Yeah.
You can do that too. You can do stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that I thought that I had picked fairly decent times to do that, like specifically when we were in Arcadia researching.
I'm not saying you didn't, but you were asking like when should I, when shouldn't I?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you picked the wrong times to do it. I'm saying there was a disconnect between the players and the GM.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that the story, like, I don't think that most of the PCs have discussed these personal goals with the GM in order for him to weave it into the story. If that makes sense.
Well, some of them have because I was the one that gave it to them.
Yeah.
However, I don't know how they're wanting to deal with it sometimes. That's the kicker.
This is what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that the player characters have chosen wrong times or have done it inappropriately. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's been a lack of communication between players and GM to weave the story, because Byron is one of the finest GMs I know, but he still can't read minds yet. He's working on it. So
I'm better at it in person than I am over the internet.
But I mean, that without communication, the GM doesn't know, and so we all have to.
Not only that, but also, and I'll say this because this actually plays into with Anaya as well. The GM forgets,
yes,
too, because I've got so much on my plate that I'm dealing with behind the screen. I may make it look easy, but as Howard admitted, I think it was last episode or the episode before, he knows how much work he's got on this game alone, and that's just the shit I'm giving him.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I actually brought that up with Miri, I was like, Miri, try to remember when you feel you should be making a roll for your gift, because I have fucking forgotten about it half the time, because I get wrapped up in what else I'm trying to do, with everyone else and with the story as a whole. Yeah. So, reminding me, especially like, let's say if you were to pass a note to someone, and then, remind me after a while, like especially if you've come into a location or situation where you could have heard something back.
Uh-huh.
Remind me that you've done it, because I may have forgotten. You may be like, hey, you remember that note? I would have been like, sure I do. Let me just figure out what the hell I freaking found. When actually it was like, oh shit, no I haven't. So, and I think like your one example of you were wanting to talk about it and then we got sidetracked. You may have mentioned it to me before, but then I fucking forgot too.
Yeah, and then we kind of moved forward, and I was kind of like, but...
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, and I was like, but we've already moved forward, so let's just go.
Well, which I actually do kind of appreciate sometimes too, because like I said, sometimes you got to hit the pause button yourself.
Well,
on something your character's wanting to do until later.
As you know, I have run a game where somebody had a very big fit over us moving forward because he was not heard.
Yeah. Yep.
So I try to be very understanding of that.
Past experience is definitely shaping the future.
Yes, I try to be very understanding when that happens, because, in all honesty, it really is not a big deal, because you can do something. It's not life.
Yeah.
It can happen later. It's not a big deal.
Yep. So I think we've gone on long enough about all this.
Yeah.
This is going to be a long episode.
2 hours already.
I hope it was a good example to everybody listening about how players and GMs should communicate with each other about characters, if nothing else.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Communication is the key.
I learned a lot.
That's one of our. God, we beat the dead horse with that one on this show. And the sad part is that obviously we keep doing it because it doesn't always happen, even with us.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Because I'll fully admit it. I don't communicate as often as sometimes I probably should.
Yeah, and I like specifically I want to be a better role player because, I love role playing and I want it to be enjoyable for everybody. I don't want something I'm doing to make something not enjoyable for somebody else, I love you guys.
All right. So yeah, let's bring this one to a close. Otherwise, we can go on all night.
Yeah.
As much as I would love to go on all night, I can't.
Yeah.
So, but if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you would like to see us discuss or cover on the podcast, you can email us, tweet us, comment on the videos on YouTube, or comment on the blog. Obviously, I try to link everything to everything else. So if you're listening to this, you found it out somehow, so you should be able to get a hold of us in some shape, way, or fashion. Doram it. Oh, and also, there will not be an episode next week. And that is partially because of the fact that our editor is moving,
Good luck.
and partially because of the fact that I'm helping her move. So, there will not be...
record.
Huh?
It'll be kind of hard to record when you're moving.
Well, it'll be kind of hard to record and then get stuff edited and whatnot. But she tells me that she said she only needed a couple of days. I'm giving her a week. So hopefully after. God, okay, hang on. This will be posting on the 29th. So there will not be an episode on the 6th. So we should be back. Yes, we should be back on the 13th.
I was gonna
I'll
say-
actually be down, which I'll actually be down with Howard by the time that the episode goes live.
I was going to say, this episode's been kind of long. Why don't you want to split into a two-parter? So then
No.
you have 2 episodes?
No, I honestly, I'd rather do this in one full swing. And this is a long episode, so this should tie everyone over. So.
Just trying to give you a shortcut, a little cheat.
Yeah, I don't like doing two-parters unless I specifically plan for it, because otherwise it's kind of hard to decide just when you're gonna
When to break it.
when to break it and
Yeah.
whatnot. So anyway, so thank you for joining us this week. Hopefully you will join us the week after next, or the next time we're on. Thank you, Puff, for having the subject and the idea, and for coming on
Yes.
and letting us pretty much tear into you.
Thank you for doing so. I really appreciate it. Again, art school background, I can handle critique, and if Howard, Byron, if any time something happens and you need to pull me aside and say, look, you need to do this, or you need to work on this, please don't hesitate. I can handle it. My feelings are not gonna be hurt.
Okay.
Don't sugarcoat. I can take honesty. I can.
Well, Howard is definitely one for that. Me, I have to see something first. That's why I usually tell people I do best with questions.
Hmm.
You get me a question first, and that gives me a springboard to then go off of.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I just kind of look at you like, you're fine. So anyway, before we get off on another tangent,
Yeah.
I have been your GM Byron.
I have been your co-host, Howard.
I've been Puff.
Nice.
And just remember the motto of Rho Pi Gamma is roll high, play well, die hard.
Hard.